Hi all, thanks for joining us today. We're just going to wait here one more second to allow anyone who's still getting logged in to join us, and then we'll kick off the meeting. Hi all, thank you again for joining us tonight for the Highway 99 Gateway Revitalization Project Stage 2 kickoff meeting. My name is Alexis Lorenz with WSP, and I am the Communications Public Involvement Lead on the project. I will also be your moderator for today. Before I get started, I just wanted to talk through a few housekeeping items. To reduce background noise, you have all been muted throughout the presentation. At the end, we'll have a Q&A session where we can unmute you to be able to ask your questions. If you have questions throughout the presentation, you're welcome to drop them into the chat. We'll compile them up and ask them at the end to have them answered for you. We're asking that you keep your questions short to about 1 to 2 sentences in length. This will help us provide a more clear answer to your questions and reduce any unneeded follow-up in the future. If your question is very specific to you as an individual as well, we may have to follow up with you after the meeting, but we will tackle those as they come in. To get us started today, I will pass you over to Rob English. He is with the City of Edmonds, and he's our engineer on the project, and he's going to talk us through the agenda. Over to you, Rob.
Thank you, Alexis, and good evening, everybody. Rob English, City Engineer and Acting Public Works Director here at the City of Edmonds, and I appreciate everybody's attendance tonight. I know the sun is out, so that's been a rarity lately. So it's I know there could be a lot of other things that people are doing, but I appreciate that you're here and wanting to hear the presentation tonight. As far as the agenda, and we'll go to the next slide. I'm just going to do a quick overview of the agenda. And as far as the items to cover tonight, we're going to meet the project team, including our design engineer and our construction management team that will be managing the project over the next 7 to 8 months. And then we will also be doing a project overview to talk about the design elements of the project, the construction schedule, and then how the construction will be sequenced during the project how it's being built, what to expect during construction, and then how to stay informed. Probably that's the most important part that we want to convey tonight is how to receive project updates, and if you have questions, who to call here at the city, and that contact information. And then at the end, as Alexis mentioned, we will have a question and answer period to answer questions about the project. Next slide. And before I introduce the team, I do want to make you aware of a poll that we're going to introduce. And this poll is related to the city's compliance with the non-discrimination Title VI requirements. Since we receive federal money, this is something that we comply with, and it's really just an effort to identify some questions to help us target, how to reach out to people, because part of the poll is related to limited English languages. And so if you could take the poll, that would be great. It's not required, and it is anonymous. So that poll should be showing up on your screen. You're more than welcome to, again, fill that out. It's not required, and it is anonymous. And with that, I will go ahead and introduce the team. Again, my name's Rob English, the City Engineer and Acting Public Works Director. Jaime Hawkins, he's a City of Edmonds employee. He's going to be the capital project manager on this project. And Bertrand House, he's also with the City of Edmonds. He's the transportation engineer. Alex Frentis is our communications and public involvement manager, and she's with WSP. Robert Hallowell is our lead inspector, so he'll be out on the project during the construction phase monitoring the contractor's progress, and he is a consultant with WSP. Alexis Lorenz, she's our communications person as well. She's just did the introduction for this meeting, and she's a consultant with WSP as well. And then Lisa Reed, the design engineer, she works for SCJ Alliance and was the project engineer during the design phase and led us to this point to where we're ready to start construction. And then Mick Capeless, he is the contractor on the project for Westwater Construction, and he's in attendance as well for tonight. And that is the project team, and we'll move on to the next part of the presentation, which is the project overview, and I'm going to hand that off to Lisa.
Thanks, Rob. So I have a couple of slides here where we're going to talk through what is included in the project. First, to get to this point, we've been working on this project for, I think, 5 years, since 2017, and planning the improvements to the entire corridor from 244th to 210th within the city of Edmonds, and developing conceptual plans for the planning stage. And during that time, we had a handful of open houses and sessions with property owners and tenants, and got a lot of feedback that kind of really built up what we designed for stage 2 today. So in this project, we're going to construct safety improvements along the entire corridor. So that's from 244th down at the shoreline city limits, all the way up to 210th, where we start Linwood. There's 3 really major elements of construction. The first is going to be converting the existing center lane, the 2-way left turn lane, into a raised and landscaped median with left turn pockets at the intersections and a handful of mid-block left turn pockets between some long intersections. We're going to install what's called a high intensity activated crosswalk. Easy way of saying that is a hawk signal. And that's really a pedestrian signal about 600 feet north of 234th, which I'll talk about in a second. And we're going to install some gateway signs at each end of the project along 99. So the next slide gives you a couple of images where we have rendered what these improvements will look like. So on the left, you have the current view of Highway 99, and that's looking south from about the Mazda dealership. And on the second photo there, you get the rendering of the raised landscape median. So that raised median is about a 20-inch high, low profile barrier curb. And it's going to add a lot of safety improvements because we've seen a lot of accident history with cars conflicting in that 2-way left turn lane and left turns across the intersection. And unfortunately, left turns into driveways when traffic is backed up. We talked about U-turns, and the other thing to note here is that there will be about 130 trees planted in the landscape median all the way along. The second big element is the gateway signage. And so at both the north and the south ends of the project, we're showing some rendered signs welcoming people to the city of Edmonds. And so at 210th, traveling southbound is the first one there on the left. And then when you're traveling northbound all the way down in front of the Campbell Nelson, just north of 244th, we'll have a sign for traffic going northbound. And then the next slide talks a little bit about the hawk signal that I mentioned. And like I said, there's one really long block in the project between, well, let's say it's 238th and 228th. It's about a mile with no signals. And there's a couple of intersections in there that you can't cross at very well. So about 600 feet north of there, and that's between the Community Health Center and the Pacific Place Apartments, we're going to put in this hawk signal that will improve safety significantly for people who are walking, rolling, and biking in the corridor by providing an additional protected crossing. And this is a different kind of signal. The picture on the left there, we show the one that's just being constructed on SR 104 at City Park in Edmonds. And the sign kind of gives you a little indication of how this operates. But basically, there's a handful of configurations. When you come up, you'll see 3 heads. And so there's 2 heads on top and 1 on the bottom, and the top's red, the bottom is yellow. And when you come up to it or when you drive through it normally, no pedestrians there, it'll just be black and you can go through, just take a look, make sure nobody's in the crosswalk. When it's been activated by a pedestrian, it will start to flash yellow, telling you that a pedestrian has pushed the button, and then it'll go solid yellow, telling you, just like any other signal, that it's time to slow down and stop. And then it'll go solid red. And the solid red tells you that you need to stop and wait for pedestrians. But the cool thing about the hawk signal is when the pedestrians are about halfway across the intersection, it'll start flashing red. And at that point, you as a car or a vehicle would need to stop at the stop bar and look. And as long as the pedestrians are clear, you can continue. So it doesn't stop you the entire length across SR 99, but it does provide protection for them when they're crossing at least that first half of the intersection. So it'll be really important to make sure that when you see the flashing red that you stop and that you take a good look to make sure there's no pedestrians in your path. And then I think that is it for me. I'm going to hand it over to Jaime to talk about the construction and what to expect there.
Jaime, you're on mute.
Like I was saying, I'm Jaime Hawkins. I'm with the City of Edmonds, and I'll be the project manager for this project. This project, as you can see in the schedule, is going to go starting at the end of June, and we're going to go into the first quarter of next year. We're hoping that, we'll be close to be done around the beginning of February. Phase one of this project is site preparation, and what entitles on site preparation is putting up all the erosion control signage that are going to be required prior to any work. Mainly adding U-turn signs at the signalized intersections as 238, 228, 224, 220, 216, and 212. Some of those intersections don't have the U-turn sign right now, so we're going to put that up because once the project starts, then we're going to be closing the left turn lanes, and we want businesses to be able to access, have their access undisturbed. So people will be able to go to the intersections and make a U-turn. Phase two is roadway excavation, utility installation, the median construction, paving, curb ramps installation, and the planting and vegetation and shrubs. What this is going to be is roadway excavation. We are going to be the first phase of any zones will be doing the crossings. We have planter medians in the center lane that will need to install irrigation systems. And for that, we need to cross the road with irrigation lines and water service lines in order to provide irrigation for the plants. So we will pretty quick, we'll soak out, remove the asphalt, we'll excavate a little bit that's on the subgrade, and then start prepping and constructing the medians. Once the median is constructed, then we'll pretty much fill in the medians with the materials such as rock and topsoil, and then the planting will follow. And so the schedule is broken down into 4 zones. Zone 1 will go from starting at 236 and head south towards 244th. Zone 2 is from 236 to 230th, starting at 236 and heading towards 230th. Zone 3 is 224th to 230th, and then zone 4 is 210 to 224th. Phase 3 will be site cleanup and activation of the hawk signal system, which is towards the end of the project, where the hawk signal system will be by that time. We are hoping that it will be completely installed, and we turn it on, we'll do the testing, and we leave it on for the public to start using. The corridor width or the length of this project is all the way from 210th at the beginning of Edmonds, just north of 212, all the way down to the border, the south border between Shoreline and Edmonds, and the city of Edmonds. Next slide, please. The work sequence, pretty much covered a little bit just in the previous slides in the schedule. Construction will start at 236 and move south towards 244 towards the end of June. In general, the work zone will follow in the following sequences, and that is installing the underground utilities, such as water, service lines, irrigation lines, conduits, electrical conduits, and some storm work that we have to do just south of 240th. Then, like I said, we will be removing the pavement, forming for the median, pouring the concrete for the median, and then filling in the median with the materials such as gravel, topsoil, and then following with the plants. Thereafter, towards the end, we will do the hot signal system installation. In between, somewhere towards the end of the year, we'll be doing some work in preparation for the hot signal system. Once the material arrives, then we'll erect the signal poles with the mast arms, and then do the testing at the end of towards the end of the project. And one of the last things is the striping of the roadways. The way that we've designed this project and the expectation is that as we move from phase or from zone to zone, we want this to be 100% complete. And what that means is that we want to make sure that everything is done at that zone, so that way we don't have to come back as we move north. So the idea is to have the striping complete at this before we leave one zone. We are allowed to keep up to 2 zones open and to work on, and the plan is to stay at those 2 zones until completed before we move into zone 3. We want only 2 zones to be worked on at a time. Next slide, please. What to expect during the construction? The plan and the design and the expectation of this contract is to always maintain 2 lanes of traffic and provide U-turns, which will be permitted at the signalized intersections only, and that is during the construction. Most of the work will occur in the center turn lane, and for that, like I said, once we do all the crossing, then most of the work will concentrate in the center turn lane, which means once we remove the asphalt, the pavement that's in the center turn lane, then we will close the two lanes that are parallel to the center turn lane, and then we will maintain the 2 lanes. The bus lane will become a general purpose lane, and the lane adjacent to it. So we will always maintain the 2 lanes through at all times. During the day, as we're doing work, we might disrupt if we have to disrupt those 2 lanes, then we will reduce it to 1 if we have to, but it shouldn't be for a very long time. The permanent closures of the center lanes will be permanently from one end to the other of the project as we move through the phases. And then at the end of it, once the project is complete, that's going to be the new configuration of the lanes. You are going to expect some increase in noises and dust and vibration as we are doing some excavation and compaction of the material that we are installing when we're doing the crossings. Work will primarily occur during the weekdays between the hours of 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. And some work will be required at nighttime, and that is between 240th and 244th. What's going to happen there is because we only have 2 lanes each direction, we are going to have to do the work at nighttime in order to be able to handle the traffic, because the volume during the day is too high to reduce it to just 1 lane. And so night work, where the volumes are a lot lower, will allow us to reduce the flow to 1 lane and allow us to do the work between 240th and 244th. Next slide, please. What you see in here, this is what the final configuration of this stage 2 is going to look like at the end. You have the planter median in the center, what it is, this center turn lane right now with the trees and all the vegetation. And then you will have, what we have out there right now is the bus lane with the right turn only, which is what we call the bat lane. And then we have the 2 through lanes or general purpose lanes going both directions, north and south. So that is pretty much what's going to be at the end of the project. So you will see this configuration as we move north, and by the end of the project, hopefully next year, at the beginning of the year, towards beginning of February, we will be seeing this complete from one end to the other. Now we'll pass it on to Rob English to talk about future work on Highway 99.
Thanks, Amy. Just to, I guess, also share that there's more work planned on the Highway 99. A few years ago, the city completed a corridor study of the Highway 99 segment from the city limits and identified a range of improvements from right-of-way line to right-of-way line for the entire corridor. The cost estimate at the time was, I believe, 185 million. That was back, those numbers are old. I'm sure it's well over 200 million today. And so the decision was made to phase or stage the work in smaller segments so the project could be built as funding was put into place. And so this initial stage 2 work where we're building the medians is the purpose is safety improvements. It's eliminating those vehicle accidents, severe vehicle accidents from people turning out of the two-way left turn lane and making the median so it's better controlled from an access management standpoint. We, as this project is going to go into construction, stage 2 is going to go into construction, we also are beginning design work on stages 3 and 4. And the limits of that work is between 244th to 238th Street, that's stage 3. We're beginning design work on that phase this year. And so far we have $27 million secured in state funds for that project. And that will basically work when we get it to construction. We'll build the improvements behind the curb. So it'll be widening the sidewalks, providing a planter strip, improving the street lighting, and then adding, as we work along the corridor, capacity improvements at select locations at intersections that are experiencing level of service issues in regards to service level at the intersections. So stage 3, as I mentioned, starting design. Stage 4 is 220th to 224th Street and includes the 220th intersection. We're also starting design on that project as well in 2022. At this point, we have 3.2 million secured in state and federal funds. And so just wanted to make you aware that other work is in the design phase to improve Highway 99. And as the city secures more funding in the future, we'll continue to build these improvements from right-of-way to right-of-way on up north along to the corridor to the north city limit. That concludes my remarks on this slide, Jaime.
So Alexis, you want to walk us through the how to stay informed?
Absolutely. Alex, if you can move us forward just one slide there. There are a lot of ways that you can stay informed with us over the course of this project. One of the best ways to get information is by signing up for our email updates. We will notify you through those emails whenever anything notable is upcoming, and that will be a great way for you to get in touch with us to ask any questions along the way as well. If you would like to subscribe for those email updates, you can drop your email in the chat and we will get you subscribed right after this meeting. So save you a step of having to email us down the line. Also, you can attend our future drop-in sessions if you would like to stay informed. They will be happening off and on throughout the course of this project. And so by signing up for those emails, you will be able to see and hear when our next event is. We'll be updating our website throughout the project as well with all of this key information. And then you can call our 24-hour hotline with any specific questions that come up. Robert Hallowell, he's on the call as well today. He is one of the folks who staffs our hotline, and he will be a great resource for you if you have questions. And then you can always email us and visit our website, as I noted. So Alex, if you move forward one more slide, we can start to move into the question and answers as well. A lot of you have been posting your questions in the chat along the way, so thank you. And I see some hands that are raised. So we're going to jump into that. Just a reminder for everyone, or if you were a little late joining us, you can either add your question into the chat or raise your hand. If your hand is raised, we will unmute you and allow you to ask your questions. We request that you keep your questions about 1 to 2 sentences long to help keep it really succinct so we can focus in on that answer for you. And if your question is a little too specific to you as an individual, we might have to circle back later to make sure we have the right information to help address it. Roger asked a really good question in here. He said that we have a lot of different construction impacts that have been going on adjacent to businesses as part of this project. How will businesses be notified? And will any businesses lose access at any time? So I talked through some of those modes of how we will be communicating out. Jaime or Rob, do you have anything to add in regards to losing access at any time for businesses?
I'll take a stab at this and having jump in afterwards. As far as business access, the work is primarily going to be in the center median because that's where the construction will be occurring. And we will, as Jaime indicated, be taking the interior lanes when that median construction is taking place. So the lanes adjacent to the two-way left turn lane, the lanes, the current business access transit lane, the BAT, as they call the BAT lane or transit lane, that will be converted to general purpose lane in the areas where the construction is occurring. So there'll still remain 2 lanes in either direction of Highway 99. So access to driveways will remain open, but obviously during construction, some of the access that currently exists today out of that two-way left turn lane will be impacted with the construction. And obviously once the median is constructed, then access would be through either left turn pockets or U-turns made at signals or the pockets themselves when they're completed. So there will be an impact at least from turning movements out of the center two-way left turn lane. Turning movements into driveways, we don't anticipate any impacts to having to close a driveway to a business. Jaime, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, most definitely. So just to add to what Rob's saying is, if you imagine most of the work will happen on the center lane once we start demoing that and we completely remove the asphalt there. But also one thing to keep in mind, we have 15 crossings that we have to make for irrigation to come into these center islands to be able to water the plants. As we do in those crossings, we'll start from mainly on the northbound directions. That's where most of these crossings are going to be on the east side of 99, where we will start with one lane, the BAT lane or the transit lane being closed, then we'll move to the second lane, and then we'll move until we get across to the entire width of that northbound direction. As we move, the 2 lanes will always be maintained. So the crossings is the first business order of business that have to happen in order to maintain the 2 lanes at all time. 1 or 3 of these crossings might be impacting the access to 1 or 2 businesses, but through traffic control and channelization, we are able to maintain the access at all time. No different than what GRE is doing right now for Les Schwab, for the all the adjacent property there, the community center, where their access is being through cones and barrels is still being maintained in order to keep it safe. So access, I myself have walked the corridor for the first phase, for the first zone from 236 all the way up to 244. I've spoken to all the businesses. I've invited all the businesses to this meeting. So that is one of the ways that I communicate with the business community out there. They see me, they have our contact information, and because I want to know how their access, how their business is being impacted in order for us to better their access throughout the construction.
Awesome, thank you. I see Natalie's hand. Natalie, I'm gonna allow you to talk. You are welcome to unmute and ask your question.
Hi, are you able to hear me?
We can, yes.
Awesome. You mentioned stormwater improvement south of 240, and my understanding is that that is Mathey Ballinger Park, which is the only park to serve this area, which is the second most densely populated, most diverse, with the fewest park resources. How do you plan to mitigate the significant loss to recreational services to this area during the time that park will need to be closed to implement the stormwater improvements?
So the extent of the storm work that we're doing is just extending a couple of storm lines that we need to in order to accommodate the existing system that's there, and not bury, pretty much, if you want to look at it, think of it that way, not bury because of the new planter. If we were to leave the structures, there's 2 or 3 catch basins that will be buried if we don't relocate them outside of the new proposed alignment of the barrier. So all pretty much we're doing is extending, relocating existing CBs or structures that are there, and extending the storm line, the infrastructure that's there, to make sure that it's outside of the footprint of the median, and to be able to collect the runoff that they are currently collecting. So we're not really doing that much change to affect to the extent of what your question is.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yes. Go ahead.
Yep, let's go with one.
So the stormwater facility that the city is proposing at Mathey Ballinger Park is not associated, even though it drains the highway and is proposed to infiltrate stormwater from the highway into the park, which can create a contamination plume under the park. You are telling me that those stormwater improvements are in no way connected to this revitalization effort. Will you please confirm that that's correct?
Jaime, do you want me to get that one?
Yes, please.
So like Jaime said, the only improvements stage 2 has are some minor extensions. When we go to stages 3 and 4, we have a little bit of widening, and that's when we need to address basically new impervious surface and new stormwater improvements. And in that case, water from this section goes to 3 different sources. It goes to Hall Creek, Lake Ballinger, and actually out to the Puget Sound, depending on which section we're in. And as we get into those stages, we will look at those impacts, and we will be mitigating both water quality and flow control as needed and required for the Western Washington Stormwater Manual. And we can talk about that at future open houses if you have more concerns. I think that's probably the best place to get a hold of us. But I wrote
I
that
just want to know if the action is connected. You're making it sound like the action of the stormwater improvements at Ballinger are not connected.
They're not connected.
Okay.
The 2 concurrent projects are not connected. We do discharge to Lake Ballinger, but the projects are not connected. And we're not impacting that discharge.
Awesome, thank you for that question. Another question we got here in the chat is from Glenn. Where do you anticipate traffic will be rerouted if there are lengthy traffic jams?
Bertrand, you on?
Let me read the question again.
Where
I mean,
do
that's
you
something that's something. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Where do you anticipate traffic will be rerouted if there are lengthy traffic jams?
Well, currently we're not anticipating. I mean, like Jaime said, we're maintaining 2 lanes of traffic at all times. So I mean, the traffic flow is going to be pretty similar with what's going on right now. So we're not anticipating any significant traffic jams. I mean, the signals are on an adaptive system, so they're coordinated along the whole corridor. And we don't anticipate different additional traffic delays from what's existing right now. But that's obviously something we're gonna keep an eye on. I mean, Jaime and his project team will keep an eye on that. They'll be there all the time, so they're gonna see if there's some significant increase, but it shouldn't be an issue.
And then we had a few questions kind of going back to that landscape piece. Alex, are you able to navigate us back to that cross-section graphic in the presentation? Maybe Jaime, you could speak to, or maybe Lisa, where we're going to be seeing landscaping occurring. Will there be any tree plantings along the sidewalk to provide a cooling of canopy? And then there was also a little bit of a mention about a landscape buffer between travel lanes and on the sidewalk of the section view. Can you speak a little bit more behind that?
Yeah, I can hit that. So this project is going from curb to curb, existing curb to existing curb. And we're really just dealing with the median as you see it there. This picture was drawn back in the early planning stages. Since then, we're considering putting like tree wells into the sidewalk that aren't necessarily shown in this drawing, but we're looking at separating that with a planter strip where we can fit it in, and then actually making that an 8-foot sidewalk. And that's something that we will do in the subsequent stages. So stage 3, stage 4, and the subsequent stages, those will deal with the existing curbs outward. And yes, those are elements, and definitely want to stay tuned and come to the open houses for those projects.
Perfect. Another question we got in here in the chat is, will there be improvements to the area between 224th and 238 for pedestrians after phase 4 as well? Maybe Rob or Lisa, you could speak to that one.
224th to 238 is, yeah, I'm not sure which stage that is, but there is a future stage that there are future stages after 3 and 4 that finish the work all the way from 244th to 210th. So yes, there are subsequent stages. We just have to do the funding acquisition for each stage and complete them as we get money.
Perfect. Are there any other city projects that are underway in the corridor that will be either planned or under construction during the time of this project? I don't know, maybe Rob or Jaime.
Can you repeat the question again, please?
Yeah, over the course of this project, are there any other city projects that are underway, either being planned or in construction?
Rob, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, oh, well, I'll just, again, I'll mention that we have other design work taking place on the stages 3 and 4. That's starting this year, that was referenced in the presentation. At this point, there's not any other city project up on Highway 99. You know, there are some development projects, at least one big development project that's nearing completion, and we've been coordinating with them on that. But that's all I'm aware of at this point.
Awesome. Similarly to that, there was a question about whether the Gateway District project, if there's a study underway around the various redevelopment scenarios. Not sure if we have the knowledge to be able to speak to that right now.
Yeah, we don't have a representative from the Development Services Department, so it's probably something that we can follow up on.
Okay, perfect. Looks like one last question we have here. So if anyone else has any lingering questions for us, they are welcome to drop them in the chat. I know there's a few that we'll be following up with after as well. This question here is, how much right-of-way was or needs to be acquired for this project?
Lisa?
There was minor right-of-way acquisition from 3 parcels. One was to upgrade a curb ramp on a corner of, I think, was it 230th and 99? And then we had to acquire just tiny bits of right-of-way to get the Hawk signal poles in. And that's it.
Along the line of the Hawks, if the Hawk crossing is also for bicyclists, how will they be routed after crossing at 234th to nearby bicycle routes? will they be expected to ride on the sidewalks or along Highway 99?
And so the response to that is very similar to the rest of the responses. The curb to curb work is what we're working on now with that crossing. And as we widen the road and do the stuff outside the curbs, that's when we'll address bike connectivity in future stages of the project. So for now, bikes will continue as they were, either in the outside bat lane or probably driving on the side or riding on the sidewalk, and the connections will be the same as they are now. We'll just have a crossing they can use.
Okay, perfect. And then we had a follow-up question to our landscaping buffer question earlier. Will the future phases be to install landscape buffer? Are those already funded? Do we have the funding for the landscaped buffer?
For stage 3, that's the one again, starting design between 238th and 244th. We've secured $27 million in state funding, and that would include the wider sidewalks and the planter strip between the sidewalk and the outside lane of travel. So yes, for that particular segment or stage 3, we do. At this point, that's the only stage that we've secured the funding for. But as I mentioned, the city is going to continue to pursue additional funding in the future to continue the improvements to the north.
Awesome. Looks like that is all of our questions. Again, there are a few people that we will be following up with again, so don't worry that we haven't touched on all of those. I do want to thank you all again for coming out tonight. I know, as Rob mentioned, we appreciate you taking the time and coming out. It helps us get a sense of who you are. You can meet us and we can help start to build this dialogue, and definitely hope that you'll be in touch with us again. For those who have registered for our email updates through the chat function, we will get you added to that. Rob and Jaime, do you have anything else you'd like to add before we end today?
I again just want to add again, say thank you to everybody that attended, and we appreciate you taking the time to be here tonight, and feel free to reach out to those contact information. That's what it's there for. And during construction, if there's any issues, please call the hotline number. And again, thank you for attending tonight.